Thank you. Appreciate it. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Red Baker. He has applied to potentially serve as chair of the Department of Forestry for another 6 years. I thank you all for coming today. And before I get started, I want to mention to those of you who are stakeholders who we requested to come in to meet with Red, we'll have you meet with him after the seminar at 3:30 up in the conference room. That's just a reminder of where that will be. If you need any help getting there, I'll be happy to direct you. Dr. Baker, of course, has been with us for 6 years already. His academic background includes a BA in economics from the University of the South, an MS in forest resources from Clemson University, and he received his PhD in forest biology from Auburn University. Prior to his arrival here to the University of Kentucky, he spent a number of years at the New Mexico State University as an assistant, associate, and then full professor on the faculty there. And immediately prior to his arrival, served as the coordinator and director for the Range Improvement Task Force in New Mexico. I'm pleased to introduce Red. I certainly have enjoyed the first 6 years working with him here at UK, and I'm hopeful that we'll have 6 more good years with his leadership. And with that in mind, and Red, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the introduction. And I'd also like to add my thank you to everyone in the room for setting aside some time today to participate in this seminar, and hopefully we'll get some good discussion going. But before I dive in, I'd like to recognize a few guests that we have with us today. And first, David Williams, recently appointed director of RCARS. We look forward to working with you, David. Thank you for being here, Bob. Moral support. Bob Bauer with Kentucky Forest Industries Association. We're grateful that you're here and representing KFIA. Frank Hicks, thank you for being here on behalf of the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association. Bill Lorenz, supervisor at the Daniel Boone National Forest, thank you as well. Bill Steele, fairly newly appointed state forester and director of Kentucky Division of Forestry. So thank you for being here. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Excellent. So I actually did put together some slides and thought it would be interesting because I don't get the opportunity to give PowerPoint presentations very often anymore. But before I jump into what I put together, I'd like to say what a privilege it's been for me to be able to serve as the chair of this department for the last almost 6 years. It's been a really tremendous experience for me to get to know all of you and work with you. And I'm just really grateful for that opportunity. And it's been a good move also for my family. So as I started putting this presentation together, I encountered the same presentation that I used 6 years ago. And I know I've changed, I've grown a lot, I've learned a lot, and I would say the very same thing for my family. Back in 2010, that's when I arrived in Kentucky with quite a bit younger family than they are currently. This was just taken at Pilot Knob on Valentine's Day. So Lexington's been very good to my family, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here and work at the University of Kentucky. So, brief outline of what I understood the department really wanted me to try to address over the course of this seminar. First, we'll spend a little bit of time going over some of what we've accomplished during the last 6 years. Following up on that is something that I called reflections or introspections. Dr. Lackey explained to me is if you had to do it all over again, what would you do? Would you do anything differently? So I'll spend a few minutes addressing that in that section. Spend a little bit of time talking about my management philosophy and what I believe to be the department chair's role leading the department into the future. And of course, spend a little bit of time talking about what that future might look like. When I start talking about accomplishments, I want to be really clear that whatever we have accomplished, it is certainly something that we have all done together. I think, for my part, we've made a lot of progress over the last 6 years, and that wouldn't be possible without assembling a good team of folks who are committed to the department's mission and goals and objectives. And just real briefly encapsulate where we are from a personnel standpoint. In the last 6 years, we've added 5 new faculty, and we've got 1 more on the way. This has created kind of a bimodal distribution of seniority within the department. I think that's a strength. It gives our senior faculty an opportunity to help mentor those newer faculty, and we've been able to expand into some areas that we hadn't had previously, and that's really been a growth opportunity for us. We've added quite a few adjunct faculty. We've added 8 adjunct faculty over the last 6 years, and they contribute in a variety of ways to our research enterprise. It's my hope that we can start having some more formal discussions with some of those adjuncts about finding a way to contribute to the teaching part of our department. We've added 7 new staff over the last 6 years in some important ways. We've got a forest manager down at Robinson Forest and Chris Osborne, a couple of our newest hires, Matt Springer and Lori Thomas, very excited about what they're bringing to the department. And I'm constantly reminded that it's a very difficult thing to go out and find really good people. And it's truly a multi-million-dollar decision. You anticipate someone being with you for an entire career, and by the time that's all over, you will have made a considerable investment. So it's very important to do a good job of managing these searches, and I think we've done just that over the last number of years. Also very glad to report that currently maintain about 5 postdoctoral scholars in the department, and that has enabled us to go in a lot of different new directions, and I'm very excited about that. These folks are contributing to our research enterprise significantly, and it's good to see their contributions to the department. One of the things I think that I'm really proud of in thinking about our faculty and staff and the relationships that we have with folks not only around the college but also around the university. We contribute very significantly to the research enterprise for the college, and certainly our extension team, I think, is one of the strongest in the college. And we have folks who are chairing the natural resources program in the college. We have faculty senators. We have the chair of the CAFE P&T committee. All of these folks on our faculty and staff are making contributions beyond the department, and I think that that's a civil obligation that we have being housed in the college, and I think that we're well known across campus for those contributions, and I look forward to that continuing. We've done a few things, I think, to help contribute to the environment in which we work. The recent work-life survey, I think, was a positive result for our department. It told us, for the most part, that we work and get along well together, and I think that's important. I think there's some things that we've been doing over the last 6 years to help contribute to that. Things like our fall picnic, things like the spring recognition dinner, and the occasional softball or volleyball game. Things like that, I think, are important developments that we continue doing to help build our department. I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a little bit of time talking about our students and their accomplishments. Very proud to say that over the last several years, we've had approximately 25% of our enrollment on the Dean's List. And over the last couple of years, we've had at least 30% of our graduates who are graduating cum laude or better. And that means that we've got some scholars in our undergraduate population, and that's important. Many of you may not know that we've got the third highest veteran enrollment of any department on campus, behind only nursing and kinesiology. So veterans are finding a nice home here in Forestry, and we appreciate the experience and perspectives that they bring to our department. Currently, about 20% of our undergraduate student enrollment is from underrepresented groups. Our recent program review noted that we'd like to see that number go up, but you know, it is surprising to see that number of 20%. It's a little bit higher than what you might have guessed. But another metric that's intriguing to me is 3 years ago we had about 18-19% of our undergraduate student enrollment were first-generation college students. Last year, that number jumped up to about 30%, and most recently, when Laura looked at our current enrollment, it's showing that about 50% of our undergraduates are first-generation college students. That's a really high number, and I think that that's something that we could be proud of. And we perform a wonderful service for those students that come here and may be the first in their family to get a college education. I think that's something we can be proud of. We also fortunate to maintain one of the highest graduate student enrollments that we've had in many years. In fact, it may be the highest ever. We're sitting at about 30, I think, right now. And we're currently in the process of exploring developing a PhD program here in Forestry. And by all reports, it's within reach. So I'm optimistic that sometime in the not too distant future, we'll be able to add that PhD to our department. We focused quite a bit on retention over the last couple of years, and I think that that's the appropriate thing to do. We may have seen some slippage in our recruitment and our enrollment as a result of that focus on retention, but we're going to really start applying ourselves a little bit more toward the recruitment side of things, and hopefully see if we can get our student numbers up. And there's a variety of different ways that we're doing that internally. One of our accomplishments that I'm very proud of is the establishment of the Forest Health Research and Education Center. This has really given us an opportunity to grow in different ways. I think it's been quite successful, not including the original grant that funded the Forest Health Center. We brought in over $1 million in a couple of years in terms of soft money, both grants but also in gifts. And we look forward to that success continuing. We think that it's an opportunity to reach out and work well with other departments in the college, and it's given us an opportunity to really expand our scope to an international level. And I'm very happy to report that part of that has been the addition of 2 Forest Service scientists to UK's campus for the first time. Dr. Tyler Dredden, tree pathologist, and Dr. Dana Nelson is also full-time located here at UK's campus. So I think that's something that we can be very proud of. Point out too that on a national level, NOFRA the National Association of University Forest Resource Programs. That's the association that represents forestry programs around the country. We've recently begun some conversations at the national level to try and implement a new program within NIFA to address forest health research gaps in a more serious way. And we're hopeful that we can take a similar approach that APLU just did with water research out of NIFA and take that same kind of approach to establish a forest health program. So if that becomes a reality, I look forward to additional opportunities to help the Forest Health Center grow. I think the department, in addition to being well represented across the college and across campus, I think that we also perform some leadership roles on the national level through NOFRA, again, also through SAF and IUFRO. John Lotka is currently on the accreditation committee for SAF, and that's an important role. It's a very time-consuming and demanding responsibility, but I think that we're learning a lot about the accreditation process, and John's able to bring that information back and help us as we will be going through accreditation in right around 2020. It's also important to note how well our extension programs are respected around the country. If you talk to Eric Norland, who is the head forestry extension guy out of NIFA, he will tell you that we have got one of the most successful research or extension teams in the country. And he is not shy about singing our praises, and I think that that's something that we should be very proud of. One of the other things that we've done over the last 6 years, and one that I think has opened many doors for us, is starting this economic analysis for the state of Kentucky. And before we began this about 3 or 4 years ago, we really didn't have a good handle on how big the industry, the forest industry writ large, was in Kentucky. And through the work of Jeff and Allison Davis and Billy and Bobby, they've done a tremendous job putting this together. I really think of it as a game changer. It's been an opportunity for us to have conversations that we never would have had otherwise. So I'm really proud of what they've been able to accomplish, and look forward to seeing that expand when we get our new forest economist in. I think we've made some important inroads toward building relationships with external groups and partners, some of whom I listed at the beginning of this seminar. It's important for us to recognize that without our partners, we wouldn't make nearly the impact that we are able to by virtue of working with them. We've started an advisory board within the department over the last 6 years, and I think that's been a great opportunity for us to understand better about how we can do a better job of being relevant, teaching our undergraduates the different skills that they need to go out and be successful. And we've also built more relationships with our alumni. We're very close to having the Forestry Alumni Scholarship endowed. I think we're a couple of $1,000 away from that, and we'll be giving out another $1,000 scholarship during the spring recognition dinner coming up toward the end of April. Many of you may not know this, but Bobby Ammerman recently was asked to serve on the board of KFIA, and I think that's quite an honor. We appreciate KFIA giving us that opportunity, and we look forward to that continued work together. Finally, one thing that about 6 years ago, Robinson Forest suffered from not having a permanent source of funding that would enable it to, for us to do our management activities. And I had the opportunity to work with the previous Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, Frank Butler, and then carry that into the new EVPFA, Eric Monday. And essentially what this is money that comes directly from the Robinson Forest Endowment at the university level, and it goes into our management coffers at Robinson Forest. Currently, it's about $80,000 a year, and that's just enough for us to meet our expenses. We're actually formally trying to increase that amount to about $120,000. Chris Osborne has done a tremendous amount of work making sure that we're keeping track of the university's interest, particularly in a mining sense, and that takes a lot of his time, and we're trying to see if the university will up that commitment. But it's really been a great opportunity. We had the opportunity to take President Capilouto around Robinson Forest, and when you sat with him and explained that this 80-year-old stand of yellow poplar used to be a cornfield, you could see he really understood the importance of Robinson Forest. And I think the Streamside Management Zone research and demonstration project is another great example of how Robinson Forest contributes not only to research knowledge, but also policy at the state level. And having that investment, having those resources enable us to do our research and extension down at Robinson Forest is very important. So as I reflect on the last 6 years, Mike asked me to cover what I might do differently. And you know, one thing that I wish we had made more progress on was new building. It's been a constant challenge for us, and I know that we frequently find our facilities less than ideal. The temperature is either too hot or too cold, and we really don't get the opportunity to do lots of kinds of research that we might otherwise do just because our facilities aren't up to the task. I think evidence to that effect is really is evident when you look at what we've been able to accomplish with the lab over in Plant and Soil Sciences, the lab that the Forest Health Center is using, and we've attracted quite a bit of additional resource that we wouldn't otherwise have just because we have that facility now. I'd also like to say that I wish we could have acquired more money for the Forest Health Center. Our original plan had been to fund it all up front, and we just weren't able to put that package together. It is our plan to move forward, however, with a cluster hire request, and I'm going to be reaching out to Bob and some of our other colleagues in other departments proposing that. We add faculty members to each of our departments that are collaborating on the Forest Health Center. So I've got an email sitting in my inbox or ready to send to y'all about getting together and doing a meeting to discuss these cluster hires. And I did have a conversation with Nancy about that earlier this afternoon, and she was very excited about it. So, does that answer your question, Mike? I'm sure that there are people in this room that would have some other things that they might say I could have done differently, and I look forward to hearing about those. So, in the discussion phase of this, maybe we can pick up that theme. So, in order to answer this next question, specifically, what is my management philosophy and what is the department chair's role, I'm going to go back to the exact same slides that I used 6 years ago. And because I think that it still holds true today, my philosophy, as I talked about earlier, has always been hire the best people that you can get and do everything you can to keep them. And if you treat them with respect and you treat them fairly, then I think that's the best way to start. I certainly don't consider myself a micromanager. I have largely a hands-off policy. I do like to maintain an open door policy, and sometimes that gets me in a little bit of trouble when it comes time to get certain things done or reports finished on time, and that means that I have to go home and work at night, or maybe I just have to excuse myself and work from the home office in order to get something done. But I do, as much as possible, like to maintain that constant accessibility and open door policy. Integrity is an important thing to me, and I like to emphasize that with everybody in the department. And I think it's only fair that we ask others to make it the same priority. Communication is very important to me. David and I have talked about that a lot relative to our cars, and look forward to working with you as we move forward. But my philosophy is essentially lay everything out on the table and make sure that you're as transparent as possible, and also to solve problems as soon as they arise, because little problems have a habit of becoming big problems, and they become harder to solve once they grow bigger. Another important job of the department chair is to help allocate resources, and for the most part, we'd like to allocate resources for accountability. My philosophy on this has changed a little bit since I've been in this position. For the most part, we allocate resources pretty equitably here. And I can tell you in conversations with other chairs, not only within the college, but also around the country, that the operating money that we as a department are able to give our researchers and our extension specialists is quite a bit more than what you see in other departments around the country. There's some pretty dismal operating budgets, less than $1,000 annually in some cases. And I don't know for the life of me how you run an extension program or a research program on that little money. So for the most part, we try to use that money wisely, and we allocate it pretty equitably. Spend a little bit of time talking about the future of the department. I think a successful future for this department requires that we have an innovative and relevant research enterprise. I think we've made some real strides toward that end in the last number of years. I think it's exciting when you look at our research productivity per FTE, and we maintain one of the highest research productivities within the college. We're one of the highest in terms of research publications per FTE, and we also do a pretty good job attracting resources per FTE. So I think we're quite competitive there. We need to continue investing in that way, because we're increasingly hearing things like return on investment, and that's an important part of the way we demonstrate a return on that investment. I think clearly the Forest Health Center is one of these opportunities to help us grow our program, and there is a great deal of interest out there in forest health issues. As I mentioned earlier, there's some initiatives that we hope to develop on a national level, and I see this just continuing to be an important vehicle for growth within the department. One area that I think we can do better in is in staffing. We are nearly fully employed in terms of our faculty and staff. I've talked to Dean Cox more than once about how important I think it is for this department to be able to add staff lines, research technicians, and I think there are a number of ways that we can do that. And we've been able to hire a couple of, Andrea is no longer new, but Chase has been here for what, a year now, a year and a half, Chase?
Almost a year.
Almost a year. So those additions to our department have really increased the productivity of our faculty, and we'd like to continue doing that if at all possible. Also been having conversations with Western Kentucky University and Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife about bringing a cooperative research unit to campus. Mike is currently leading those discussions with WKU. We plan on picking those up again in the summer. But I can tell you in my visits with the director of the Cooperative Research Unit program, John Organ, out of the USGS, he is very interested in helping us make that a reality here in Kentucky. There's 2 other states, Michigan and New York, would like to add CRUs, and we're the 3rd. And John's objective is to get the USGS units fully staffed, and once that occurs, then he would be willing to help us push adding a CRU here in Kentucky. So look forward to those conversations. I think that has great potential to help us grow our research enterprise as well. More recently, been involved in some conversations about possibly bringing a hardwood silviculture research cooperative to UK. To the best of our knowledge, Chris Reeves has done some work on this research, on research cooperatives, and we've discovered that there really isn't a hardwood research cooperative anywhere in the country. And we feel like this is a niche for us and may give us an opportunity to do the kinds of work that might not be as easily fundable, say, in Washington, D.C. A lot of the kinds of research that we find funding for in Washington, D.C. may not be as relevant to some of our industry partners. And the project that got this kick-started was Mike and Jeff's BAT project that is essentially jump-starting this cooperative. We've got about $150,000 grant, and they're going to leave some of that in there. And we're going to reach out to other industry folks and try to make this a growing and a building cooperative for us. Obviously, want to continue pushing new facilities. Dean Cox has had some recent conversations with UK, and my understanding is that they're going to start prioritizing and putting together a master plan for the south part of campus. And the university has dedicated some resources to that effort. So it finally seems to look like we're going to be able to start putting some of these plans into place and pursuing them with a little bit more support from the university at large. So, those are only a few of the things that I think we need to keep our eye toward moving into the future. I think obviously the program review that we just completed here a couple months ago is something else that we need to spend some time visiting. There's a number of action items within that program review that was recommended for us to address, and as we continue reviewing that and pushing that forward, those obviously will be a part of our efforts moving into the future. So with that, hopefully I answered the questions and addressed many of the subjects that the department was interested in seeing me address. But certainly, if I did not, or you have questions about things that I did not cover, I'm more than happy to go into that. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions about any subject that you want more information. So with that, once again, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to the discussion.
Questions for Dr. Baker?
Yes, sir.
If you could get the co-op wildlife unit going, what do you need to work with you? What kind of support do you need to get that going?
I think political support at this point. There are a number of folks involved in the foundation that provides the political support for the CRUs nationally. And we have already begun those conversations. I've worked with our federal relations guy here at UK, and he's been in conversations with USGS as well. So I think mostly once USGS gets their staffing up to fully staffed level, then we'll start moving more seriously to try and make that a reality. And at that time, we'll be reaching out to our partners and asking for their support. Well-placed calls to the right people in DC, I think, would be very helpful, obviously. But just knowing, too, that there's an interest out there on the part of the Forest Service or other agencies, I think would be important as well. Other questions?
What's your plan about how to recruit and retain a more diverse faculty for future hires?
That's a great question. So we are, this current search that we're doing, we have reached out not only through the traditional channels, the listservs and the job postings, but Dr. Lotka has reached out personally to literally dozens of folks across the country. And we're really trying to identify a diverse group of folks that would be competitive for that job. I think if you look at the list of candidates that we're currently considering for the short list for phone interviews, it is a diverse group. And I think we've been successful. But I think it's one of those things we just have to keep our eye on the ball. And wherever possible, try to keep building in that diversity in the faculty. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You talked about retention efforts over the last couple of years. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, and then how you also envision the new recruitment efforts working for students?
So the university placed an emphasis on retention a couple years ago. And about the same time, we were identifying a number of ways that we could do a better job retaining our students. The current university retention metrics don't treat forestry very well because we don't get a large number of our students through freshmen when they arrive on campus. We get more of our students from transfers and coming in as sophomores. And so that has the problem of skewing our retention numbers a little bit. But we implemented a number of programs that we thought would contribute to the fabric of our undergraduate student population. For example, the Fire Cats is one of those things that we think helps for them. It's great experience. They go on to find permanent jobs more easily. The folks that were part of the Fire Cats last several years have all done really well trying to find jobs, whether they're interns or internships or permanent career positions. A number of those other kinds of things that we've been trying to do student services wise out of Laura's office to improve retention, make sure that the students feel they've got, we've got their back. Moving forward though on recruitment, we have the student engagement committee, Steve, that you're a part of, working toward trying to identify some strategies for recruiting more effectively and recruiting a more diverse student body. So I look forward to those conversations out of that committee, and look forward to what we can do in other ways to improve our recruitment. I think one thing that I'm really excited about is the curriculum revision. That will give us an opportunity, I think, to bring in more students, not only majors, but also non-majors into our building, and I think that will lead to some improved recruitment. We've got efforts now to try and make some of our courses part of the UK core. I think that'll open some doors for us, and we'll see some recruitment response there as well. So I think, it's just one of those things that we're just going to have to consistently and persistently work on. And Laura has been really good reaching out to Lori Thomas now, and they've got some really good ideas about how to work together moving forward to bring in more students. That answer your question? Yeah. Other questions?
I want to get back to Jen's question about diversity and hiring for diversity. And as you know, there's a lot of effort happening at the college level and also at the university level to be more proactive in the ways that we expand the representation among our faculty to be more reflective of what we see in our student body. And so I wondered if you could speak a little bit to the strategies you can imagine using going forward. I guess maybe not in this search since it's already underway, but going forward from here, that from what the discussions you're hearing about that kind of more proactive strategies for increasing recruitment of a more diverse group of faculty, what sorts of things you could imagine embracing here in our department? Right.
So are you speaking specifically about the unconscious bias training, or
I'm
beyond
asking you a
that?
more open question about,
Right.
So no, I'm not, I'm just asking
Right.
what you've been tapped into with these larger college and university discussions, what you can imagine.
Well, I think there's potential for that unconscious bias training to contribute in that way, Mary. I've had an opportunity to visit with Andrew Hipsley, and did learn that they're not planning on offering those trainings until the summer. My understanding is that the chairs and the deans and associate deans will go through that training sometime this summer, and then it will be made available to faculty and departments sometime in the fall. So I'd like to bring in someone who's been trained in that. Ron Warner Wilson is one of the folks that were trained in that unconscious bias training. I think he went away for a 3-day training. And so I think he'd be a great one to bring in and do about a 3-hour program. I think we need to keep reaching out to the experts. We've been recently working with some of the HR folks on the director of philanthropy search for the college, and become more familiar with some of the resources that they offer and some of the services that they provide. And I think that we could tap into that and use that office more effectively to help us with our searches. As you point out, it's probably too late to do it here specifically in this search, But I think moving forward, it would be a good idea to take advantage of those services and resources that they offer at UK HR. Because they're pretty sophisticated and they do a pretty good job. Does that answer your question?
If we're given an opportunity down the road, presumably budget issues at the university settle down and be more predictable, if we're given an opportunity to add faculty to the department, do you have any thought at this point as to where you might want those hires to be and what lines and perhaps maybe why?
I'm not sure that I'd feel comfortable making that decision out of the chair's office. I think that several years ago, we engaged in a process where we identified the top 5 new hires that we would make if we had that opportunity, kind of a strategic visioning process. My sense is that we need to do that again. I think we've had some changes, and maybe to answer your question specifically, it would be a good exercise to go through that process. So I would very much like to engage the faculty and the rest of the department on that question. I think there are some opportunities, obviously, in the forest health arena. If we have an opportunity, that would be one area that I would look. But there are a number of niches that we've identified, whether it's urban forestry or recreation, a variety of different subjects that we pointed out through that visioning exercise. But I'd like to do that again, Mike. I think it would be a worthwhile investment. Other questions?
Okay, there are no further questions. Let's thank Dr. Baker again for